Hello, everyone. I'm Don Varga with Wacom Americas.
Hi, everyone. I'm Heidi. I'm from Wacom as well.
I wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. First, let's meet our guests. Sam Carey, will you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks for having me here. My name is Sam Carey. I'm the founder of New EdTech Classroom and was also a teacher for a decade and an instructional coach. And my background is that I actually was a tech skeptic for a very long time and came to embrace education technology for the way that it helped me put in place research-based instructional practices that I had been trying to put in place for a long time. And I created the New EdTech Classroom really to show teachers how that could be done. And so I'm excited to show today and talk today just about how digital ink, I think, plays a key role in that.
Fantastic. And Matthew, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Matthew Waney. I've been working in the industry and in education for over 20 years. I currently work in Los Angeles at LA Unified, where I teach two pathways, CTE pathways, both animation and video production. And I'm at a SPAN school, a K through 12 school, Title I. So a lot of our students are coming from low income households. So it's their first introduction to art and technology coming together, career skills that they could be learning. So I'm just excited to be able to share the experiences my students have had and the opportunities that have come together using Wacom equipment.
What are the sorts of activities and use cases that you see teachers really adopting?
Yeah, it's a big question that I could spend an hour answering, really. There are, I think, if we kind of step back and think again about really high impact instructional practices, there are a few that I think are really made possible with something like a Wacom pen tablet, and that's asynchronous instruction. That's universal design for learning, or a way to build differentiation into one's curriculum, essentially, and the importance of having students create and make things with technology. And all of those are very challenging actually to do if you have limitations with the way you can interact with your device. So, I'll just give, again, three quick examples. If you are trying to actually instruct a lesson, move your instruction into a digital format, use something like any digital whiteboard tool, and you want to record that to make that available for students and families outside of class, or to be able to do any kind of like in-classroom flip. Imagine just trying to write on your digital whiteboard using your trackpad or your mouse. It's not fun, right? And it doesn't work that well. And it's actually a reason why teachers don't do it, because of that significant inconvenience, which is something that people don't think, all the time about. You look at a tool like Pear Deck, which is a Google Slides add-on that allows students to draw responses in response to a question, which is an effective UDL tool. It's giving students multiple means of representing their knowledge. But if you're asking students, again, to do so with a trackpad or a mouse, it's just not the same. You can't draw anything complex. You can't even, I have a lot of practice and I still can't even really do like basic math, let alone draw something. So even though Pear Deck has this awesome built-in tool for UDL, it's not really usable unless you are able to write or draw the same way you would with, your hand. And for creativity, same thing. If you want to open up drawing as a way for students to be able to show their understanding, it's just that it removes the barrier to interfacing and engaging and interacting with what is on your screen. And I think that helps to open up this whole world of what education technology can really help us do in a really powerful way.
Do you see teachers starting now to incorporate pen control into all of those activities?
Yeah, I think there's of course always going to be a subset of teachers that are kind of, on the vanguard, that are pushing things and doing that more. I would say the overall percentage of people doing that is still relatively low, just because I think a lot of it is about awareness and access to the hardware. You're going to use what you have in front of you. If schools also gave teachers a pen tablet, Do I think that they would start also using more digital whiteboarding tools and things like that? Probably so. The general direction has been and will continue to be to move toward more technology integrated curricula and more technology integrated teaching, and absolutely have teachers that learned a bunch of these tools and skills continue to use them, particularly the ones that are directly connected with effective instructional strategies. Yeah, and that's just going to continue to grow. Yeah, I think it's really based actually on the idea that schools, the purpose of schools is ultimately to prepare students for the world in which they currently live and the world in which they will live, to prepare them also to just have the widest array of choices available to them. You know, we're not trying to dictate to students, you must work in the tech field or something like that. But in order to have the most available range of choices when you leave K-12 education, it is inarguable that you need to have a certain set of skills in how to use technology, because that's the world in which we live. So when I say 21st century classroom, to me, that in part means a classroom, a school system that reflects the world that we currently live in, and is also thinking ahead about the world that students are going to graduate into.
What have you seen from the software standpoint? Are you seeing a lot more software being developed now for teaching with pen in mind, with, you know, this idea of how are we going to prepare these students for when they graduate and go out into the world and the types of things that they'll need to know?
Yeah, I think all the most powerful programs have some integrated drawing feature, actually. One program that I know Wacom does partner with is Kami, which is an incredibly powerful program for basically turning, you know, potentially your pencil and paper curriculum, and you know, you can upload a PDF or take your static PDF type documents, which I know a lot of people are in that situation, and turn them into something that essentially becomes interactive, that students can engage with, and that you can fully customize. So, you know, it's no longer that a student is just reading this PDF, right, that you assign to them. And particularly if you do that in a digital environment, it's actually worse than doing it on paper, because they can't annotate on that, which, you know, as a reading teacher, that's my background. I would expect students to be able to write on it, annotate it, make meaning of it. And whenever I would assign something in digital format, it's just a static document. And a program like Kami changes that and enables teachers to create an interactive digital assignment. And that's just one of many examples.
Do you find teachers still have a big barrier to trying some of these things out?
I think it's impossible to describe the entire teaching core as a monolith. I think there's a wide variety of interest in teaching with technology, skill level teaching with technology. Still, I think one unfortunate consequence of remote teaching is that a lot of people have now equated remote teaching and online teaching with technology integrated teaching, which is not necessarily at all the same thing. And certainly teaching via Zoom and replicating essentially a traditional lecture format via Zoom is not at all, you know, integrating technology. That's using a video conferencing tool, which is not an instructional technology tool.
Yeah.
So I think there is a consequence where people kind of now lump everything into, oh, that's remote teaching, if you're talking about teaching with technology. Again, I'd say for the most part, that when you have a kind of shift in the culture, a shift in skill level, there are definitely more people that are interested in teaching in this way. I talk about pen tablets in this way because, to me, if you cannot do something in a way that feels normal and natural, that's enough to be a barrier. You know, like, why would I want to do that? It doesn't,
right.
You know, writing in this way is terrible and clearly inferior to writing, you know, with my actual marker on a physical whiteboard. So I think those types of actual, like, very small kind of implementation concerns might be the key to unlocking sort of more mass adoption of instructional technology.
Matthew, I'd love to hear from you now. You have a very, very interesting job, and you have a very interesting role in kind of the community as I understand it. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks, Sam. That's some great insight you're sharing there. A lot of that take back to my classroom. So as I said earlier, I'm at a Title I school. So a lot of my students don't have that type of technology at home. And back before the pandemic, back before we all went remote, my classroom, I'll admit, it was a Mac lab. Like we had our MacBook Pros and stuff like that where the kids were able to use. And then once we shut down back in March 2020, all of our students went home, obviously. And not all of our students had that computer at home, or maybe they did, but they had two other siblings who needed to also have stuff to use. So, and be able to start using those along with their Wacom tablets and to be able to like actually get them and be able to put those two things together. So we continued with our animation classes. It was a couple of weeks of like getting equipment out to students and being able to figure it all out. And ultimately, a little bit of pen and paper, pencil and paper, and then we were able to get it going. And we used, and I know you guys are partnered with them, but we used the Magma Studio as one of our first digital assignments where the kids got to then interact and communicate via the interaction. Basically, if you're not familiar with it, it's a great drawing device that lets you, platform, I should say, that allows you to collaborate with other people. So I put 3 or 4 students into one space. I'd basically drop in a background and be like, now let's create some character, let's create some props, let's create some other things in there. And so they were able to just go and kind of feed off of each other. If somebody was drawing a sort of this flying creature, somebody else was able to create something chasing after it. And somebody else was able to create this kind of gothic tree that they were able to put in, and just really had them have some fun. And also, digitally, because a lot of them are literally, you know what, I do this with pencil and paper. I like to do things more traditionally, and just be able to bring in and see how they could change the colors and the brush size and all that type of stuff, make that transition. And now that we're back in the classroom, our students continue, pretty much all have one-to-one devices. And again, majority of them have Chromebooks. So now in the classroom, we're able to do that. They're able to pull those out and be able to use that now in the classroom. And even though we might still do stuff collectively digitally, but now they're able to share and turn to their neighbor and talk to them and share with them, here's one thing I'm working on, here's, can you give me feedback on this character and this stuff like that. So there's just a really amazing transition. And it was great to be able to see that technology could get out into my students' hands, be able to give them the ability, because so much with what's going on is just the equity of it all. I mean, when you have students in more affluent neighborhoods able to have that stuff at home, have that stuff already, and that's great for them. But that same desire, have that same eagerness to learn, and some of them like, I didn't even know this was a possibility. For them to be able to see that with their Wacom device and their Chromebook was just really amazing and really inspirational.
Fantastic. And I know you have a lot of industry hookins that you're working with. Can you talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, definitely. One thing, and whether it's like at the professional side or the nonprofit side, one group that's been amazing to work with is Brick Foundation. We were actually one of their pilot programs probably 2 or 3 years ago, and they focus primarily in the animation and VFX space, but they do live action stuff as well. And they have their creative academies, which usually take place, every quarter throughout the year. And even now, as we've moved forward, that my students have done animatics with them. They've gone to the Lightbox conference, been able to sort of interact with other industry professionals and see what they're doing. They've been able to develop a marketing campaign through a different thing. So all this type of stuff obviously builds into these career skills and goals that a lot of my students have. And to be able to have these skills to walk in to any interview is just going to help them out and be stronger.
Yeah, I think that's just an incredible opportunity. I mean, it's an amazing thing for anyone, right? To be able to experience and get that professional help. Could you talk a little bit more about, as your students, make that transition into digital art?
We also have used the Clip Studio Paint for that. I guess some of my students have, and back during it was remote, I kind of let the students, I introduced a number of things to them and they could use what they felt most comfortable with. But I've had students use that as well as some other stuff out there. We've also used Wick Editor, where for one of my advanced classes, I actually had the kids develop their own narrative video game, where basically they would create the background, they create the visual elements, and then, it kind of be text-based, make this choice, make that choice. And the kids really embrace that. And just, again, to be able to use their Wacom devices to like draw that stuff and really sort of build that background, those characters, those props. And that's really what it comes down to the industry. I mean, somebody doesn't just sit down and draw everything. It's really very compartmentalized. Like, all right, I'm just in charge of vehicles. I'm just in charge of backgrounds. I'm just in charge of characters. And just to be able the students to be able to use the devices to create that and really sort of see, now, how do I build this? How do I shade it? How do I color that? And I'll say one thing I'm really proud about my program is that even though we're a magnet arts magnet, we have a lot of students who have very limited to, they'll even say no artistic skills or capacity at all. And you know, I'm encouraging them. And I was like, well, that's, you know, we're not looking for you to be a Disney level or a Pixar level animators, but as long as you're coming in every day, learning the skills, learning the techniques, learning these tools, they're just going to keep getting better and better. And then when you go in for those interviews, you go in for those job applications that you're working on, you can speak to it. You can have real experience about like, you know what, using this tablet has allowed me to do this. Or, you know what, it's a lot easier, back to what Sam was saying, to be like, now I can actually do my notes. And if I'm running the production for an animated story, I can like do all this stuff digitally, and then it's easier to share. It's easier for everybody to get in and sort of work on and contribute and collaborate together. So that's a couple of things we've done. The ability to like, all right, and now let's integrate this change and that change. And really, you know, because a lot of my students, students across the country, you know, they are, oh, you know, I've done it and that's all I'm going to do, or it's kind of perfect or whatever. But, you know, really be able to engage the feedback, be able to go back. And that was one of the things just across the board, my students, you know, working digitally, like, oh, you know what, I made a flower here on the right side of my screen, but I want it a little bigger. I want it over here, and to be able to scale that, to move that, like, and to be able to use their tablet and their pen to be able to do that versus like, oh, crumple it up, I'm starting all over just because everything was drawn perfectly, but it's just the placements, the locations, the scale. And in that class, we actually have Cintiq 16s that we've been using this year, which I was very excited about. And honestly, I got those as part of a grant back in the middle of 2020. So they unfortunately sat in my classroom for about 9 months before we were able to crack them out. But now my kids just love them. They're like, oh, you know, I don't want to use anything else beyond this. I was like, well, I can't let you take it with you at the end of the day, but, you know, take this experience with you and move on with it. But that's something where I'm excited for this in the spring this year. We are going to be actually having the kids do 3D design. So they're going to be using Blender, and all these websites I'm talking about right now are all like web-based applications. And that was another big thing for us, because again, back when we were going remote, you know, students didn't have a computer that could run some of the sort of more powerful programs that are out there, and or all of our district stuff is like, to be able to update it, the IT people had to come and do it. A student can't just do updates, can't just download stuff. There are all the different firewalls and stuff up there. So, and that's the other great thing about, you know, the partnership you guys have with Chromebook, and be able to, you know, plug it in, and now it can just up and go. And that gives the students a lot more freedom to that. But back to my advanced class, you know, so they're gonna be doing some 3D sculpting, digital sculpting, which is just gonna be amazing for them to be able to see now, take it to that next level. I mean, they've worked with 2D their entire life, and I mean, they're just so excited. And some of the kids who, again, is like, I don't even want to go into animation, but this is just gonna be pretty amazing. And I've had students before where that freshman year, oh, I want to be whatever, and then they've taken the class, they've gone on a field trip with us, and they've like, you know what, I'm gonna go into screenwriting or storyboarding or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds amazing, and I think that obviously it's a fantastic program. One of the things I wanted to ask you, and I kind of saw in your bio, is that you've been very, very instrumental in grant writing, and you had mentioned getting Cintiqs through grants. So you do that with different schools, different school districts, obviously, or is that?
Yeah. Well, primarily, I mean, that's for my school and my programs, but I've definitely helped other schools and different districts to be able to sort of write that. And really what it comes down to, I mean, a lot of times, you know, people think about it, you know, it's very formulaic, it's very like sort of rigorous to work on those grants, but, you know, and I'm sure it's, you know, my background as well, just as a screenwriter and stuff like that, like, it's really about the story, like what is happening in your classes, what is happening in your community, how is this going to influence and affect your students, and really sort of give them that opportunity to find a new path, to find a path they might not even have thought was possible. And one great thing that's happened, and actually just recently, one of my students that I was talking about, who had done the narrative text-based video game design last year, while it was all remote, he ended up applying for a new program through UCLA that had a game lab program over the summer. And he was selected for that. He ended up getting a full ride grant, given his family's economic status. And so he's really able to embrace that and take advantage of that, and just really was able to learn at UCLA. He was able to earn some free credits there, and really was able to just sort of see, like, he's like, I really want to go into filmmaking, but like understanding how it works digitally, understanding how you work with a team, understanding how this new technology is everywhere. And if you look at whatever film that's out there nowadays, like they've got some type of CGI, they've got some type of visual effects, whether they're, changing the background from a day shot to a night shot, to like getting rid of a car that shouldn't be there. Like even those types of things was really able to sort of inspire the student to be like, you know what, even though I want to do more live action stuff, like this is essential. This is important to learn. And his story actually got picked up by Los Angeles's Telemundo station, and they did a story on him about it, and really sort of talked about where he came from and what his goals are. So
that must feel good.
It was pretty amazing.
Yeah, there's a team at Wacom, our enterprise team, that also keeps very, very up to date on those grants. So we're always encouraging, potential schools, school districts, teachers who are interested, be sure they get in touch with us, because we can offer a lot of help. We try and keep really up to date on what grants are available that could be used towards the purchase of Wacom equipment. And there's a team of people here that can really help with that. When people are interested in whether that's for creative use or academic use of any sort.
Actually, I have one, because I'm deeply impressed how you really, as a thought leader and a pioneer, jump on the wave of you leveraging EdTech and really like shaping new way of teaching, making teaching more powerful and engaging. But also, I think also, Matthew, your vision really impressed me, how you really focus on growing future skills to all kind of social background students, and also even shaping new career paths. I think this is really outstanding. My big question is actually both of you. Do you have any expectations and ask to the tech industry, since I'm in charge at Wacom for technologies? Really eager to hear your expectation and vision.
I can take that. I do also, I want to highlight what you just said as well, Heidi. Don, you had asked before, like, what is a 21st century classroom? Well, a lot of it is what Matthew is doing with students. That's exactly what I'm talking about in terms of making your classroom look like the world outside, and opening up that world to students through education, understanding that particularly at a Title I school, where students may not have access to hardware and those skills outside of school, that particularly in a Title I school, we really have to provide that access to students in those schools. And what Matthew's doing as well, I think, is a cornerstone of where we need to move education. And that's that what we ask students to do is authentic and meaningful, and it has real world application that transcends our individual classrooms. We kind of can't bother anymore, I think, with asking students to do things that are sort of meaningless and just these rote type activities. We need to engage them in these really thoughtful projects that build skills in meaningful ways. So it sounds like that's definitely the work that Matthew's doing, which is amazing. As far as the tech industry, yeah, so I've actually long kind of had a thought about this, that I think that there is a lot of responsibility from the tech sector, both the tech sector in general and the education technology sector, to help bridge the gap with your everyday school, to help make sure that schools do have access to the devices that they need, because budgets are very tight, and finding ways to help teachers understand how these products and how software can be used. Really, I'd say going 80% of the way to meet the education sector, because teachers, individual teachers, are so overwhelmed. So the more that can be shown to teachers and given sometimes to teachers, there's sometimes this attitude in education that comes across often in like teacher professional development, where we're only going to take it so far, and then you need to kind of figure things out on your own. And I just don't think that's appropriate in all situations. I think there are a lot of situations where we just need to actually hand people things and not have them imagine how you might use it. Say, these are some ways, some tangible ways you can use it that are very practical and applicable. And I think the technology sector could play a huge role in that, and in some funding pieces, you know, to help make sure that schools have access to this hardware and the software.
And just to be able to find more ways where, regardless, you know, once we're beyond this pandemic, and some schools still, you know, they go to a week or two of remote learning, like more resources, more websites, more partners. And again, when you've got your Magma Studio and stuff like that, where you can actually do that stuff just through your URL, just through your web browser, that stuff is great. So I think being able to find more partners from your end where your technology, your tablets will work with different types of stuff. And again, beyond drawing, but even, you know, from your manipulation of photography, from, you know, anything else that you could do, you know, I think that would be a great thing. I'd love to see Wacom continue to develop and just expand upon even more.
Great. That's a great bridge also to the partnership, I think. Let me share a little bit the background where we came to this. My team and myself at Wacom, so we are the Ink division, as they call it, the name Ink. So we are devoted really to build great ink experience using pen inputs and technologies underlying. And the second pillar is really about partnerships. And that's why I catch on the point, because we at Wacom, we believe technology we build has to be integrated in a way with many, many kind of partners, software, hardware, tech partners. And I think since early this year, so since 2021, we really also bring in our most popular pen tablets, like the one by Wacom, as you also are using in your classes, and also the in-tools lineup, which are all pen tablets that's being heavily used, especially by beginners, people who just learn to draw, or teachers who wants to use it for remote teaching or presentations. So since then, we have certified this as works with Chromebook, and both are really broadly adopted really by education and art classes and hobby usage. And I'm really delighted to hear from you how you could really also integrate in your daily workflows with all the use cases you mentioned. And in future, I'm sure we are also for sure, of course, planning to add more and more products to be compatible for Chromebooks. So to conclude here, I would like to add that we really believe a good experience always consists of integration in hardware and software. This is really inevitable. And for this, Sam, you mentioned many partners already we partner with in the software space. Matthew, you as well in the creative software space. So for us, these software partnerships are also immensely important, because we believe at the end, the pen usage comes always with the natural, the so-called intuitive ink experience. So here, me and my team are really eager also to learn more from you. And that's why I was asking about your expectations. So we can help also evolving these partnerships furthermore to more powerful ink usages. Yeah, thank you. But thank you for sharing all your insights.
Yeah, I wanted to really thank you, Matthew and Sam. I really appreciate the fantastic work you're both doing in your own spaces. You know, you have our support. It is always our goal to support education and creatives everywhere in every way we can. So I hope that we continue to work with you guys in the future. And on the part of Wacom, again, we have a very, very experienced enterprise team that works with schools, works with school districts, works with obviously creative enterprise agencies, studios, to help really assess their needs, to help equip them properly, you know, all the way through installation training. So you can always contact Wacom through the website if you're interested in talking to our enterprise team. Or of course, if you have questions or you want to view tutorials or sessions like this with people coming in, you know, from our larger user base on just about any subject. So thank you all very much. This has been a great discussion, a very informative discussion, and I hope to talk to you all again.